You forget old friends, said Malli with mock friendliness. You don't even look at us and we pine away for you. His companions laughed. Let him be, let him be. Jagga sat still with his eyes fixed on the ground. Why are you so angry, my dear? Why so sad? Is it somebody's love that torments your soul? Come along, keep moving, said the policeman reluctantly. They were enjoying the scene. Why can't we say Sat Sri Akal to our old friend? Sat Sri Akal, Sardar Jagat Singh ji. Is there any message we can convey for you? A love message maybe? To the weaver's daughter? Jagga kept staring through the bars as if he had not heard. He turned pale with anger. All the blood drained from his face. His hands tightened around the iron bars. Malli turned around to his smiling companions. Sardar Jagat Singh seems a little upset today. He will not answer our Sat Sri Akal. We do not mind. We will say Sat Sri Akal to him again. Malli joined his manacled hands and bent low near Jagat Singh's iron bar door and started loudly. Sat Sri. Jagga's hand shot through the bars and gripped Malli by the hair protruding from the back of his turban. Malli's turban fell off. Jagga yelled murderously and with a jerk brought Malli's head crashed against the bar. He shook Malli as a terrier shakes a piece of rag from side to side, forward and backward, smashing his head repeatedly against the bars. Each jerk was accompanied by abuse. This is rape your mother. This to rape your mother. This your sister. This your daughter. And this for your mother again. And this and this. Iqbal, who had been watching the earlier proceedings from his chair, stood up in a corner and started shouting to the policeman, why don't you do something? Don't you see he will kill the man? The policeman began to shout. One of them tried to push the butt end of his rifle in Jagga's face, but Jagga dodged. Malli's head was spattered with blood. His skull and forehead were bruised all over. He began to wail. The sub-inspector ran up to the cell and hit Jagga violently on the hand with his swagger stick several times. Jagga would not let go. The sub-inspector drew his revolver and pointed it at Jagga. Let go, you swine, or I will shoot. Jagga held up Malli's head with both his hands and spat in his face. He pushed him away with more abuse. Malli fell in a heap with his hair all over his face and shoulder. His companion helped him and wiped the blood and spit off his face with his turban. He cried like a child, swearing all the time, may your mother die, you son of a pig, I will settle this with you. Malli and his men were led away. Malli could be heard crying till he was going long away from the police station. Jagga sank back into the stupor he had been in before he lost his temper. He examined the marks the sub-inspector's swagger stick had left on the back of his hands. Iqbal continued shouting agitatedly. Jagga turned round angrily. Shut up, you Babu. What have I done to you that you talk so much? Jagga had not spoken rudely to him before. That scared Iqbal all the more. Inspector Sahib, now that the other cell is vacant, can't you shift me there? He pleaded. The sub-inspector smiled contemptuously. Certainly, Mr. Iqbal, we will do all we can to make you comfortable. Tables, chairs, an electric fan maybe. Next chapter, Mano Majra. When it was discovered that the train had brought a full load of corpses, a heavy brooding silence descended on the village. People barricaded their doors and many stayed up all night talking in whispers. Everyone felt his neighbor's hand against him and thought of finding friends and allies. They did not notice the clouds blot out the stars nor the smell the cool damp breeze. When they woke up in the morning, saw it was raining, their first thought were about the rain and the burning corpses. The whole village was on the roofs looking towards the station. The train had disappeared as mysteriously as it had come. The station was deserted. The soldiers' tents were soaked with water and looked depressing. There were no smouldering fire nor smoke. In fact, there was no sign of life or death. Still, people watched. Perhaps there would be another train with more corpses. By afternoon, The clouds had rolled away to the west. Rain had cleared the atmosphere, and one could see for miles around. Villagers ventured forth from their home to find out if anyone knew more than they. Then they went back to their roofs, although it had stopped raining and no one could be seen on the station platform or in the passenger shed or the military camp. A row of vultures sat on the parapet of the station building and kites were flying in circles high above it. The head constable, with his pose of policemen and prisoners, were spotted a long way away from the village. People shouted the information to each other. The Lambardar was summoned. When the head constable arrived with his party, there was quite a crowd assembled under the peepal tree near the temple. The head constable unlocked the handcuffs of the prisoners in front of the village. They were made to put their thumb impressions on the pieces of paper and told to report to the police station twice a week. The villagers looked on sullenly. They knew that Jagga Badmash and the strangers had nothing to do with the dacoity. They were equally certain that in arresting Malli's gang, the police were on the right track. Perhaps they were not all involved. Some of the five might have been arrested mistakenly. It was scarcely possible that none of them had had anything to do with it. Yet there was the police letting them loose, not in their own village, but in Mano Majra, where they had committed the murder. The police must be certain of their innocence to take such a risk. The head constable took the Lambardar aside, and the two spoke to each other for some time. The Lambardar came back and addressed the villagers, saying, "The Santri Sahib wants to know if anyone here has seen or heard about anything about Sultana Badmash or any of his gang." Several villagers came out with news. He was known to have gone away to Pakistan along with his gang. They were all Muslims, and Muslims of their village had been evacuated. "Was it before or after the murder of Lala that he left?" inquired the head constable, coming up beside the Lambardar. "After," they answered in the chorus. There was a long pause. Villagers looked at each other, somewhat puzzled. Was it them? Before they could ask the policeman any questions, the head constable was speaking again. "Did any one of you see or talk to a young Mussalman Babu called Muhammad Iqbal, who was a member of the Muslim League?" The Lambardar was taken aback. He did not know Iqbal was a Muslim. He vaguely recalled Meet Singh and Imam Baksh calling him Iqbal Singh. He looked in the crowd for Imam Baksh but could not find him. Several villagers started telling the head constable excitedly of having seen Iqbal to go to fields and loiter about the railway track near the bridge. "Did you notice anything suspicious about him?" "Suspicious? Well, did you notice anything suspicious about the fellow? Did you?" No one was sure. No one One could never be sure about educated people. They were all suspiciously cunning. Surely Meet Singh was one to answer the questions about the Babu. Some of the Babu's things were still with him in the Gurudwara. Meet Singh was pushed to the front. The head constable ignored Meet Singh and again addressed the group that had been answering him. "I will speak to the Bhai later," he said. "Can anyone of you say whether this man came to Mano Majra before or after the dacoity?" There was another shock. What would an urban Babu have to do with dacoity or murder? Maybe it was not for money after all. No one was quite sure. Now they were not sure of anything. The head constable dismissed the meeting with, "If anyone has any authentic information about the moneylender's murder or about Sultana or about Muhammad Iqbal, report at the police station at once." The crowd broke into small groups, talking, gesticulating animatedly. Meet Singh went up to the head constable, who was getting his constables ready to march back. "Santri Sahib, the young man you arrested the other way is not a Muslim. He is a Sikh, Iqbal Singh." The head constable took no notice of him. He was busy writing something on a piece of yellow paper. Meet Singh waited patiently. "Santri Sahib," he started again, as the other was folding the paper. The head constable did not even look at him. He beckoned one of the constables and handed him the paper, saying, "Get a bicycle or a tonga and take this letter to the commandant of the Pakistan military unit. Also tell him yourself that you have come from Mano Majra and the situation is serious. He must send his trucks and soldiers to evacuate the Muslims as early as possible. At once." "Yes, sir," answered the constable, clicking his heels. "Santri Sahib," implored Meet Singh. "Santri Sahib, Santri Sahib, Santri Sahib," repeated the head constable angrily. "You have been eating my ears with your Santri Sahibs. What do you want?" "Iqbal Singh is a Sikh. Did you open the fly buttons of his pen to see whether he was Sikh or a Mussulman? You are a simple bhai of a temple. Go and pray. The head constable took his place in front of the policeman standing in double file. Attention! By the left. Quick march. Meet Singh turned back to the temple without answering the eager queries of the villagers. The head constable's visit had divided Manu Majra into two halves as neatly as a knife cuts through a pat of butter. Muslims sat and moped in their houses. Rumors of atrocities committed by Sikhs on Muslims in Patiala, Ambala, and Kapurthala, which they had heard and dismissed, come back to their minds. They had heard of gentlewomen having their veils taken off, being stripped, and marched down crowded streets to be raped in the marketplace. Many had eluded their would be ravishers by killing themselves. They had heard of mosques being desecrated by the slaughter of pigs on the premises, and of copies of the Holy Quran being torn up by infidels. Quite suddenly, every Sikh in Mano Majra became a stranger with an evil intent. His long hair and beard appeared barbarous, his kirpan menacingly anti Muslim. For the first time, the name Pakistan came to mean something to them, a refugee where there were no Sikhs. The Sikhs were sullen and angry. Never trust a Mussalman, they said. The last Guru had warned them that Muslims had no loyalties. He was right. All through the Muslim period of Indian history, sons had imprisoned or killed their own fathers, and brothers had blinded brothers to get the throne. And what had they done to the Sikhs? Executed two of their gurus, assassinated another, and butchered his infant children. Hundreds of thousands had been put to the sword for no other offense than refusing to accept Islam. Their temples had been desecrated by the slaughter of Cain. The Holy Granth had been torn to bits, and Muslims were never once to respect women. Sikh refugees had told of women jumping into wells and burning themselves rather than falling into the hands of Muslims. Those who did not commit suicide were paraded naked in the streets, raped in public, and then murdered. Now a train load of Sikhs massacred by Muslims had been cremated in Manu Majra. Hindus and Sikhs were fleeing from their homes in Pakistan and having to find shelter in Manu Majra. Then there was the murder of Ramlal. No one knew who had killed him, but everyone knew Ramlal was a Hindu. Sultana and his gang were Muslims and fled to Pakistan. An unknown character without turban or beard had been loitering about the village. There were reasons enough to be angry with someone, so they decided to be angry with the Muslims. Muslims were basely ungrateful. Logic was never a strong point with Sikhs. When they were roused, logic did not matter at all. It was a gloomy night. The breeze had swept away. The clouds blew them back again. At first, they came in fleecy strands of white. The moon wiped them off its face. Then they came in large billows, blotted out the moonlight, and then turned the sky a dull grey. The moon fought its way through, and occasionally patches of the plain sparkled like silver. Later, clouds came in monstrous back formations and spread the sky. Then, without any lightning or thunder, it began to rain. A group of Sikh peasants gathered together in the house of the Lambardar. They sat in a circle around a hurricane lantern, some on a charpai, other on the floor. Meet Singh was amongst them. For a long time, nobody had said anything apart from repeating, God is punishing us for our sins. Yes, God is punishing us for our sins. There is a lot of julum in Pakistan. That is because he wants to punish us for our sins. Bad acts yield a better harvest. Then one of the younger men spoke, what have we done to deserve this? We have looked upon the Muslims as our brothers and sisters. Why should they send somebody to spy on us? You mean Iqbal? Meet Singh said. I had a quite long conversation with him. He had an iron bangle on his wrist like all of us Sikhs and told me that his mother had wanted him to wear it, so he wore it. He is a shaven Sikh. He does not smoke, and he come the day after the moneylender's murder. Bhai, you get taken in easily, replied the same youth. Does it hurt a Mussalman to wear an iron bangle or not smoke for a day, particularly if he has some important work to do? I may be simple, bhai, protested Meet Singh warmly. But I know as well as you that Babu had nothing to do with the murder. He would not have been in the village afterwards if he had. That any fat head would understand. The youth felt a little abashed. Besides that, continued Meet Singh more confidently, they had already arrested Malli for the dacoity. How do you know what they had arrested Malli for? Interrupted the youth triumphantly. Yes, how do you know what the police know? They have released Malli. Have you ever known them to release murderers without a trial or acquittal? Asked some others. Bhai, you always talk without reason. Acha, if you are the ones with all the reason, tell me who threw the packet of bangles in Jagga's house. How should we know? Answer a chorus. I will tell you. It was Jagga's enemy, Malli. You all know that they had fallen out. Who else would dare insult Jagga except he? No one answered the question. Meet Singh went on aggressively to drive his point home. And all this about Sultana, Sultana. What has that to do with the dacoity? Yes, Bhaiji, you may be right, said another youth. But Lal is dead. Why bother about him? The policeman will do that. Let Jagga, Malli, and Sultana settle their quarrels. As for the Babu, for all we care, he can sleep with his mother. Our problem is, what are we to do with all these pigs we have with us? They have been eating our salt for generations, and see what they have done. They have treated them like our we have treated them like our brothers. They have behaved like snakes. The temperature of the meeting went up suddenly. Meet Singh spoke angrily. What have they done to you? Have they ousted you from your lands or occupied your houses? Have they seduced your women folk? Tell me, what have they done? Ask the refugees what they have done to them, answered the truculent youth who had started the argument. You mean to tell us that they are lying when they say that Gurudwaras have been burned and people massacred? I was only talking of Mano Majra. What have our tenants done? They are Muslims. Meet Singh shrugged his shoulder. The Lambardar felt it was up to him to settle the argument. What had to happen has happened. It, he said wisely. We have to decide what we are to do now. These refugees who have turned up at the temple may do something which will bring a bad name on the village. The reference to something changed the mood of the meeting. How could outsiders dare to do something to their fellow villagers? Here was another stumbling block to logic. Group loyalty was above reason. The youth who had referred to Muslims as pigs spoke haughtily. We would like to see somebody raise his little finger against our tenants while we live. The Lambardar snubbed him. You are a hot headed one. Sometimes you want to kill Muslims, sometimes you want to kill refugees. We say something and you drag the talk to something else. All right, Lambardar, retorted the young man. If you are all that clever, you say something. Listen, brothers, said the Lambardar, lowering his voice. This is no time to lose tempers. Nobody here wants to kill anyone, but who knows the intentions of other people? Today we have 40 or 50 refugees who, by the grace of the Guru, are a peaceful lot and they only talk. Tomorrow they may get others who may have lost their mothers or sisters. Are we going to tell them, don't come to this village? And if they do come, will we let them wreak vengeance on our tenants? You have said something worth 100,000 rupees, said an old man. We should think about it. The peasants thought about their problem. They could not refuse shelter to refugees. Hospitality was not a pastime but a sacred duty when those who sought it were homeless. Could they ask their Muslims to go? Quite emphatically, not. Loyalty to a fellow villager was above all other considerations. Despite the words they had used, no one had the nerve to suggest throwing them out, even in a purely Sikh gathering. The mood of the assembly changed from anger to bewilderment. After some time, the Lambardar spoke. All Muslims of the neighbor villages have been evacuated and taken to the refugee camp near Chundunagar. Some have already away to Pakistan. Others have been sent to the bigger camp at Jalandhar. Yes, added another. Kapura and Gajju Matta was evacuated last week. Mano Majra is the only place left where there are Muslims. What I would like to know is how these people asked their fellow villagers to leave. We could never say anything like that to our tenants. any more than we could tell our sons to get out of their homes. Is there anyone here who could say to the Muslims, brothers, you should go away from Manu Majra? Before anyone could answer, another villager came in and stood on the threshold. Everyone turned round to see, but they could not recognize him in the dim lamplight. Who is it? Asked the Lambardar, shading his eyes from the lamp. Come in. Imam Baksh came in. The two others followed him. They also were Muslims. Salam Chacha Imam Baksh. Salam Khair Dina. Salam Salam. Sat Sri Akal Lambardar. Sat Sri Akal, answered the Muslims. People made room for them and waited for Imam Baksh to begin. Imam Baksh combed his beard with his fingers. Well, brothers, what is your decision about us? He asked quietly. There was an awkward silence. Everyone looked at the Lambardar. Why ask us? Asked the Lambardar. Answered the Lambardar. This is your village as much as ours. You have heard what is being said. All the neighboring villages have been evacuated. Only we are left. And if you want us to go too, we will go. Meet Singh began to sniff. He felt it was not for him to speak. He had said his bit. Besides, he was only a priest who lived on what the villagers gave him. One of the younger men spoke. It is like this, Uncle Imam Baksh. As long as we are here, nobody will dare to touch you. We will die first and then you can look after yourselves. Yes, added another warmly. We first, then you. If anyone raises his eyebrows at you, we will rape his mother, sister, and daughter, added the others. Imam Baksh wiped his tears from his eyes and blew his nose in the hem of his shirt. What have we to do with Pakistan? We are born here. We were born here, so were our ancestors. We have lived amongst you as brothers. Imam Baksh broke down. Meet Singh clasped him in his arm and began to sob. Several of the people started crying quietly and blowing their noses. The Lambardar spoke. Yes, you are our brothers. As far as we are concerned, you and your children and your grandchildren can live here as long as you like. If anyone speaks rudely to you, your wives or your children, it will be us first, or our wives and children, being a single hair of your heads is touched. But Chacha, we are so few, and strangers coming from Pakistan are coming in thousands. Who will be responsible for what they do? Yes, agreed the others. As far as we are concerned, you are all right. But what about these refugees? I have heard that some villages were surrounded by mobs many thousand strong, and all armed with guns and spears. There was no question of resistance. We are not afraid of mobs, replied another quickly. Let them come. We will give them such a beating they will not dare to look at Manu Majra again. Nobody took notice of the challenger. The boost sounded too hollow to be taken seriously. Imam Baksh blew his nose again. What do you advise us to do then, brothers? He asked, choking with emotions. Uncle, said the Ambardar in a heavy voice, it is very hard for me to say, but seeing the sort of time we live in, I would advise you to go to the refugee camp while this trouble is on. You lock your houses with your belongings. We will look after your cattle till you come back. The Lambardar's voice created a tense stillness. Villagers held their breath for fear of being heard. The Lambardar himself felt that he ought to say something quickly to dispel the effects of his words. Until yesterday, he began again loudly, in case of trouble, we could have helped you to cross the river by the ford. Now it has been raining for 2 days, the river has risen, the only crossing are by trains and road bridges. You know what is happening there. It is for your own safety that I advise you to take shelter in the camps for a few days, and then you come back. As far as we are concerned, he repeated warmly. If you decide to stay on, you are most welcome to do so. We will defend you with our lives. No one had any doubt about the import of the Lambardar's word. They sat with their heads bowed till Imam Baksh stood up. All right, he said solemnly. If we have to go, we better pack up our bedding and belongings. It will take us more than one night to clear out of homes it has taken our fathers and grandfathers hundreds of years to make. The Lambardar felt a strong sense of guilt and was overcome with emotion. He got up and embraced Imam Baksh, started to cry loudly. Sikh and Muslim villagers fell into each other's arms and wept like children. Imam Baksh gently got out of Lambardar's embrace. There is no need to cry, he said, being between sobs. This is the way of the world. Not forever does the bulbul sing in balmy shades of bowers. Not forever lasts the spring, nor ever blossom flowers, nor not ever reigneth joys. Set the suns on days of bliss. Friendships not forever last. They know not life, who know not this. They know not life, who know not this. Repeated many others with sigh. Yes, Uncle Imam Baksh, this is life. Imam Baksh and his companion left the meeting in tears. Before going round to other Muslim homes, Imam Baksh went to uh, his own hut attached to the mosque. Nuran was already in bed. An oil lamp burned in a niche in the wall. Nuru, Nuru, he shouted, shaking her by the shoulder. Get up, Nuru. The girl opened her eyes. What is the matter? Get up and pack. We have to go away tomorrow morning, he announced dramatically. Go away? Where? I don't know. Pakistan. The girl sat up with a jerk. I will not go to Pakistan, he said defiantly. Imam Baksh pretended he had not heard. Put all the clothes in the trunks and the cooking utensils in the gunny bag. Also take something for the buffalo. We will have to take her too. I will not go to Pakistan, the girl repeated fiercely. You may not want to, but they will throw you out. All Muslims are leaving for the camp tomorrow. Who will throw us out? This is our village. Are the police and government dead? Don't be silly, girl. Do as you are told. Hundreds of thousands of police are going to the Pakistan and as many coming out. Those who stay behind are killed. Hurry up and pack. I have to go and tell the others that they must get ready. Imam Baksh left the girl sitting up in bed. Nooran rubbed her face with her hands and stared at the wall. She did not know what to do. She could spend the night out and come back when all the others had gone, but she could not do it alone, and it was raining. Her only chance was Jagga. Malli had been released, but maybe Jagga also had come home. She knew that was not true, but the hope persisted and it gave her something to do. Nooran went out in the rain. She passed many people in the lanes, going about with gunny bags covering their heads and shoulders. The whole village was awake. In most houses, she could see the dim flickers of oil lamps. Some were packing, others were helping them to pack. Most just talked with their friends. The women sat on the floors, hugging each other and crying. It was as if in every home there had been a dead. Nooran shook the door of Jagga's house. The chain on the other side rattled, but there was no response. In the grey light, she noticed the door was bolted from the outside. She undid the iron rings and went in. Jagga's mother was out, probably visiting some Muslim friends. There was no light at all. Nooran sat on a charpai. She did not want to face Jagga's mother alone, nor did she want to go back home. She hoped something would happen, something which would make Jagga walk in. She sat and waited and hoped. For an hour, Nooran watched the grey shadows of clouds chasing each other. It drizzled and poured and poured and drizzled and alternatively. She heard the sound of footsteps cautiously picking their way through the muddy lane. They stopped outside the door. Someone shook the door. Who is it? Asked an all woman's voice. Nooran lost her nerve. She did not move. Who is it? Demanded the voice angrily. Why don't you speak? Nooran stood up and mumbled indistinctively. Bebe. The old woman stepped in and quickly shut the door behind her. Jagga, Jagga, is it you? She whispered. Have they let you off? No, Bebe, it is I, Nooran, Chacha Imam Bak's daughter. Answered the girl timidly. Nuru, what brings you here at this hour? The old woman asked angrily. Has Jagga come back? What have you to do with Jagga? His mother snapped. You have sent him to jail. You have made him a badmash. Does your father know you go about to strangers' houses at midnight like a tart? Nooran began to cry. We are going away tomorrow. Said that did not soften the old woman's heart. What relation are you to us that you want to come and see us? You can go where you like. Nooran played her last card. I cannot leave. Jagga has promised to marry me. Get out, you bitch. The old woman hissed. You, a Muslim weaver's daughter, marry a Sikh peasant? Get out, or I will go and tell your father and the whole village. Go to Pakistan. Leave my Jagga alone. The Nooran felt heavy and lifeless. All right, baby, I will go. Don't be angry with me. When Jagga comes back, just tell him I came to say Sat Sri Akal. The girl went down on her knees, clasped the old woman's leg, and began to sob. Baby, I'm going away and will never come back again. Don't be harsh to me just when I am leaving. Jagga's mother stood stiff without a trace of emotion on her face. Inside her, she felt a little weak and soft. I will tell Jagga. Nooran stopped crying. Her sobs came at long intervals. She still held on to Jagga's mother. Her head sank lower and lower, it touched the old woman's feet. Baby, what have you to say now? She had a premonition of what was coming. Baby, why don't you say something? Asked the woman, pushing Nooran away. What is it? The girl swallowed the spittle in her mouth. Baby, I have Jagga's child inside me. If I go to Pakistan, they will kill it when they know it has a sick father. The old woman let Nooran's head drop back on her feet. Nooran clutched them hard and began to cry again. How long have you had it? I have just found out. It is the second month. Jagga's mother helped Nooran up and the two sat down on the charpai. Nooran stopped sobbing. I cannot keep you here, said the old woman at last. I have enough trouble with police already. When all this is over, Jagga comes back, he will go and get you from wherever you are. Does your father know? No, if he finds out, he will marry me off to someone or murder me. She started crying again. Oh, stop this whining, commanded the old woman sternly. Why don't you think of it when you were at the mischief? I have already told you Jagga will not get you as soon as he out. Will Jagga will let you get you as soon as he is out. Nooran stifled her sobs. Baby, don't let him be